morning, everybody. Thanks for coming to the meeting today. And I'll list the names of people that are here. Beth is here. Audrey. What library is Audrey from? Audrey Durfee.
Ukiah.
Oh, Ukiah. Thanks, Audrey. I see that now in your email. And then Darlene and Johnson and Joyce McCurdy. Erin McCusker, Heidi, myself, Maura O'Daniel, Michelle Timmons, and Rachel Fox. So thanks everybody for coming. It's been a long time since we've had any circulation committee meet. Beth, it's been a year at least, right?
If it isn't a year, it's been close to a year.
Yeah.
A long time anyway.
Exactly. So I have 3 things on the agenda. Does anybody today have more that they would like to have on the agenda? The first one that a couple people emailed was there's one library currently in Sage. Well, there's more than one. The most recent library that's gone fine-free is the Athena Library. So some libraries are concerned how that will affect their ILL items. When you have an ILL, for instance, if I have a patron that has an ILL come from Athena to Boardman, and they are late turning it in, they have overdues, then typically we would have collected the fines, and the book would have gone back to Athena, and the fines would stay at the patron's library. That's just for overdues, not for lost books. So the concern is if there's, and then I guess the idea is that it balances out. Say I had a patron in Athena request a book from our library and they have overdues, they keep those fines. This is how it was put to me. And I'm still a little unsure of how it might be deemed unbalanced. So the idea is that if Athena doesn't charge fines, if their patron has a book in Boardman, and then I wouldn't charge any fines, but what if my book was in Athena? Would that patron be charged fines, and then Athena would be keeping fines that are from my patron? It's a little confusing for me, Beth.
Yeah, it's always been the prerogative of the patron's home library to either assess the fines or not, and the fines do stay with the home library if they are charged. So I don't think that this is going to cause any problems, but I welcome feedback from others who have
one library
opinion.
In particular contacted me and also contacted Erin McCusker for the Umatilla Special Library District, feeling that it would create an unfair balance because Athena would be collecting money for libraries from, I don't know, I got confused.
Yeah,
they thought it balanced out with each home library keeping the monies collected, and now they won't have an opportunity to keep money collected because Athena people won't have fines. And another library said, well, how are we going to make them return their books? Because once you go fine free, nobody returns books. I just think there's a lot of ideas, misconceptions, maybe not misconceptions about fine free. I mean, the one person said, well, if I send my library's book to Athena and they don't charge fines, will my book never come back? And I don't.
This is Perry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Perry.
On the first issue of a library charging fines for an item that was borrowed from a non-fines library, that's still their prerogative, right? That Beth said.
That's how I understand it.
So that's clear.
But the fines wouldn't be generated because the fines are generated by the library that owns the materials, is my understanding.
I don't think so.
What's your understanding, Beth?
It depends on how the circulation policies are written. And I think that once we determine which direction we want to go, what we have done in the past is we have tried to keep the patron experience more consistent with their home library, but it's becoming more and more difficult to do that because, well, for books it's not such a big deal, but we're having to move towards some owner-based policies for things like the educator card and for things that are just, when they're out on ILL, they're just out too long. And so from that perspective, you know, we want to be careful about basing it on everything at the home library, because that may be in conflict with the owning libraries' need to get those materials back. So I guess what I'm saying is the circulation policies, we can direct those the way we want, but in the past it has been more patron home library centric.
So
Right.
in the policy right here, it says, the only line about it is fines may be retained by the library which collects them. Is there another document which writes it out in more detail, Beth, on the SAGE policy? Okay, thanks.
We should probably
Very
add
good.
that they're based on the checkout library. So if some library has $1 a day fine on their DVDs, but we ILL it over here to Baker and check it out to our patron, they're only going to get our fine rate of 20 cents a day.
Right.
We should probably include something like that in the document.
So that's also on the agenda, is reviewing and revising this document. So is that where, what's the feeling of the committee? Is that where, first off, what's your feeling on the ILLs and fines, fine-free libraries? Do you think that needs to be addressed directly in the document?
This is Erin McCusker, and I guess I have a question just about the system itself. So if Athena is not charging fines and Athena patrons, is it set up at the patron level that the Athena patrons won't be charged fines anywhere in the system, or is it based on the item? And that's my question, and I think that's one of the questions that's coming up in our library district about how do you handle that? Is it going to be that the system is going to deal with it? It will SAGE deal with that question so that the person who's maybe at Milton Freewater dealing with an Athena patron, the system is going to take care of. There's not going to need to be Milton Freewater staff intervention to go, oh, you're an Athena patron, so do I charge you, do I not charge you? Is the system going to do that for them? Are you understanding what I'm asking? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
What should happen now, and obviously we'll have to test case this out, but if an Athena patron borrows a Milton Freewater book, and Milton Freewater charges fines and they're overdue with that Milton Freewater book, because it's an ILL.
From Athena.
If it was checked out at Athena, then they would not get any fines, right?
I wouldn't think so.
If the fines are based on the checkout library. But if they had checked it out at Milton Freewater,
then they would get fines.
Then they
like
would
if they'd
get
driven
fines.
over to Milton Freewater, physically picked it up and checked it out.
Yeah.
And then returned it at Athena.
Wouldn't matter.
It would still accrue fines.
It's just based on the checkout library.
Okay,
Yes.
so
But then
that's
Athena, okay, so then Athena employee at the counter would take the book, and it would pop up with fines, and they'd be like, well, that's wrong. We don't charge fines. I could just see this happening and not
Yeah.
charge the person fines. But Milton Free Water, but they would never have sent the fines to Milton Free Water anyway.
They would not have. Yes.
Right.
So I think some of this is going to depend on I guess how strict do we want to be, and how
Because I don't want to start micromanaging fines and having to send them off to different branches, different libraries. Oh, here's 60 cents, or, you know, that's going to get expensive.
and that's why we decided what we decided.
Right.
Was that the fines would stay at the patron's home library.
Well, and I guess that's my question is, if it was based on patron, then it wouldn't really matter. I mean, that patron would just be fine-free no matter where they went and stayed. And I think that's one of the questions is if it's patron-based, how it's set up in the system that they are fine-free. If I'm an Athena patron, then the system reads me as being not ever having a fine, unless you lose a book or, you know, that sort of thing. So
Right.
I think that's the important piece is that Athena, see, I haven't talked to Kristen, but I think that's a question to ask about how does she see that when she said, my patrons, we're not charging fines, how is she seeing that related into the whole system?
Well, and it might also be part of Athena's policy that they created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so anyway, I don't know. You know, I know she did a lot of research, and she may have talked to you, Beth, about how that was going to work. But I think that as long as it's clarified throughout SAGE and people know, so that if a library does choose to go fine-free, because there are others that are thinking about it.
Well,
They
Gillum
know-
County has been fine-free.
Yeah, and so how has that worked with them?
I haven't heard of any problems.
I haven't either, and I don't know if Mary's part of our group today. It doesn't.
She's
look
not.
like it.
No.
And I spoke to Erin. I spoke to the director of the Driftwood Public Library in Lincoln City and asked her, how does it work since you've gone fine-free with other members in your ILL consortium? And she said, well, they were one of the last to go fine-free, and it really was never a problem for the other library. That never raised as a problem. I think we're gonna, I don't know, it seems to have caused, whether it becomes a problem or not, it seems to be causing some unrest and feelings of unfairness within SAGE. So I just want to really maybe we need to do some research on what other consortiums or wording and.
Well, if
Well,
we're allowing libraries to have the flexibility of whether they charge fines or not, I feel as if we need to accept their policy, and I don't have an issue if it's patron based and they're fine free in all of SAGE. If the owning library is getting the lost book fees and the processing fees for things that don't return, that was all along what they were going to get anyway.
Correct. Terry, what were you going to say?
As one of the larger ILL libraries in SAGE, my concern would be that taking away fines would mean we're going to get our materials back, our newer higher demand materials back later and later, or that more are going to be lost. And we don't really have an effective right now process for materials recovery. We do plan on engaging with Unique, that materials recovery service this year, which will help a lot because we just don't have the staff to, be sending out notices and tracking down materials.
Hi, this is Maura in Pendleton, and one of the concerns we have is many Athena patrons never go into the Athena library and they use our library. So if they were getting a different privilege than everyone else who's in and out of here, checking out and returning here, but they never got fines, it would seem very unfair to us and our patrons in the library. So it's not even just ILL, but you know, in Umatilla County, people go in and out of libraries that aren't their home libraries all the time.
So I feel you guys are going down a different direction now. I'm just saying what I'm hearing, of saying you don't want any libraries within Sage to be able to be fine-free. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, I think what Maura's saying is if they're going to use the Pendleton Library, they should get Pendleton fines if they're overdue.
Yeah, I would be more comfortable if it was at the checkout level rather than the patron level. So somebody couldn't go around to all kinds of other libraries that are charging fines to their other patrons, but not to them. That seems a little sketchy to me.
And
so is
maybe
there checkout level, a patron level, and materials level? Are all those three different levels, as I understand it, Beth?
They could be, depending on how the circulation policy is written. I believe it's based on checkout library currently. And I think what we'd have to do is pull some reports and see what it has done in different situations with the Athena checkouts, because I haven't actually made them fine-free yet. So, Aaron, do you think that Athena would be able to explain to their patrons that if they check out something at another library that they could accrue fines there?
I think that's as far as I'm personally concerned, I think that's the question, is how is she explaining fine free to her patrons? And frankly, I haven't asked, and so I need to. And then everybody, once this group makes this decision and it's in policy, then people know, and they know how to explain what fine free means. And so then it would be interesting to see how checkout situations change. Are they going to go into Pendleton, or they will check out mostly from their library? So that's kind of, but I think that that's important, because there, in my mind, there is the question: if I'm an Athena patron and I have been told that I'm not going to be charged fines anymore, and then I get a fine when I go into Pendleton, then there's that whole issue with patron dissatisfaction and anger. And so I think it's just all how we explain it, and making sure it's really clear in this policy. Yeah. But I'll talk to Kristen, because frankly, I don't know how she has explained it to her patrons.
What about the rest of you? Is everybody else okay with having the fines based on checkout library?
It seems to make sense. Let me see if anybody said anything in the chat. Darlene and Joyce agree. Heidi, do you agree with that?
I think a case could be made for the items owning libraries policy, but I know that would get super confusing in Athena to explain that, why some items are accruing fines and some aren't. But I mean, it seems like some of the other concerns were about items not being returned on time due to no fines. So
yeah, no, that's true. That's true. So so basically, if it's based on owning library, then any ILL could have the potential of having a fine.
Correct.
But then
Rachel?
wouldn't that be the owning library's fine rate, which would be also very confusing for the patrons?
It would.
Rachel, Hood River is a large ILL library. Do you have any opinions?
In the chat, she said she agreed with the checkout library.
Okay. And is there anybody here from the Dalles? No. Okay.
I do have one question just before we move on. So just trying to get this in my mind, and I'm thinking about budgeting. So Athena is saying, yes, we're not going to have income from fines now. We're not collecting fines. But somebody is checking out something from Pendleton. I'll do it, Maura, since you're here. From Pendleton, it's returned to Athena. It was late. According to the current system, Athena collects those fines, but now they didn't put that in their budget. But they've got the fine. Pendleton doesn't have the money from the fine, even though it was their material. So then, you know, and I like the idea of just fines are retained by whichever library collects them. And yet, are you getting what I'm going there with?
That's a good point, Erin. But I think because if they return it to Athena, as in the past, that the Athena staff, as well as any other library staff at another Sage library, has the ability to waive those fines.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is my guess would be they would just waive fines there rather than collecting them.
Okay, that was good to know. I didn't know that, so thank you. Yeah, that's good to know. All right, never mind.
So all of these discussions that we had just now regarding this, I feel, do you want to make a subgroup of the committee that makes changes, or do you want one of us to make wording of the changes in our next meeting? We look at it and revise it again, and then it would have to go to the Sage Council for a vote. Is that how it works? We would say this is our policy we recommend.
So, Kathy, you're recommending, and I agree.
I'm asking
that that we should add some language to this that specifies what the fines are based on.
Correct.
That they're based upon the checkout library.
Because we have information about the fees and the fines, but we don't really say anywhere based on checkout library or patron. So I think that needs to be added. It doesn't need to be a different document. I think it could be part of this. It definitely needs to be part of this, in my opinion. But do we want one person to do the wording and bring it back to the committee for approval and discussion, or do we want multiple people to work on it as a little subcommittee? Any opinions from anybody?
Oh, we're just dealing with this one issue. I don't think it needs a committee. Can we just do it right now?
Yeah.
Overdue fees are based on the checkout library policies, and they may be retained by the library, or maybe retained or voided.
So first sentence was overdue fees are determined by owning checkout library.
By the checkout
or
library.
Owning library.
No, it's the checkout library.
Okay, thank you. Policies. And then overdue fees
may be retained or voided by the checkout library.
That makes me uncomfortable because it implies that anyone can go into any library that's other than where the fines were accrued, and they can just remove fines anywhere. I mean, I know that's already the case case, but I don't want to encourage it necessarily indiscriminately.
You mean
Like
that
where
if a
people go
fee is
shopping
accrued by
around.
a
Yeah, like you know, say somebody checks out in Pendleton, goes have it removed in Athena, checks out in Pendleton, goes and
right.
has it removed in Athena.
Yeah.
You know, or gets to $5 and then goes into Athena to have it removed so they can check out in Pendleton again. I mean, I don't think people are going to do that on purpose, but I think if we put it in the policy, it kind of gives free reign to just remove any overdue fines anytime.
So how can we better word
I would just leave it out. I mean, people already know they can do that, right?
But if it's not in the policy, you could have one library say, I voided somebody's,
Yeah.
and then you come back and say, Kathy, you can't do that. It's not in our policy.
overdue fees accrued?
I mean, we're saying overdue fees, not. Okay. I'm not sure.
I guess I'm not so concerned with like, oh, losing 60 cents here and there. I don't like the idea of it seeming like you need to shop around to get the best deal. You know what I mean? Like figure out which library will.
I mean, do you think patrons look at this policy and say, oh, if I return it to my library, I know they're going to void it, so I have $27 worth of fines and they're going to void it, whereas if I go to Pendleton, they won't?
I really don't think that happens very often, but
I was wondering whether on the overdues maybe retained or voided, should it be home library rather than the checkout library?
Well, except that we just said if
that's her concern is that the Athena library would void it.
And I have no problem with them doing that. It just seems weird to put it in the policy that any library can void any fine. I mean, obviously they can for a reason, but well, like we're a fine-free library, for example.
I mean, we already have that authority.
Yeah.
We just don't have it in writing.
I guess what I'm thinking is that you have that authority for your own patrons, not another library's patrons.
Correct.
So I guess that's why I was saying the home library, patron home library.
That makes more sense.
Makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
The patron's home library.
Yes.
Except then that whole retained part is wrong because that's wherever they want to pay them.
Right.
Okay, let's change this. Overdue fees may be retained by
any library, any Sage library, like anywhere they go in.
Sage
they could
library.
By the
and then
Sage
period.
Library receiving payment.
Fees may be voided by patron's home library. Is that correct, what you guys are saying?
Yes.
I think so.
Rather than voided, do we want to say
forgiven?
Forgiven.
That is what it says on Evergreen.
Yeah. Well, you can void too, but then there's no record of it. So I like forgiven better.
I do too. There's more track record. The statement before, Kathy, checkout is separated rather than together. Checkout library.
Thank you.
I think that it's vague to say overdue fees may be retained by any Sage library. I think that needs to be. May be retained.
At?
By the library that collects it.
Yes, by the library that collects it.
So how do you say that?
At which payment is made. I don't know, something like that.
You could just say overdue fines may be paid at any Sage library. But I guess that doesn't imply the keeping part.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that's repeated from up above? The paragraph
Yeah.
before?
Exactly. It was already in there.
Yeah, so I'm just saying we don't need it both places.
We don't need to say it there. Good eye, Beth.
And maybe we just incorporate this line in the previous paragraph.
Yeah. Oh, get over there. Yeah.
I actually think the processing fees and charges for lost or damaged items is a separate piece.
That
in my mind, I know that's another question by several libraries.
Are we done with this part right here, though, before we move on to processing?
Yeah.
No, because that's in that same paragraph. We want to take
In
that
that
out.
same paragraph. That's why.
Make it its own line or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was also up here, though, processing fees.
Yeah, it doesn't indicate where they go, though. So I think we still need to have this line just in a separate paragraph.
Processing fees and charges.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Take that out and make it its own paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. My fingers get nervous when everybody's watching me. And I don't know why it keeps bouncing out. The formatting of this, I guess. Oh, come on. Okay. It must be remitted to the owning library. I'll cut that part off. I don't know how these were formatted before, but they're a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Might just have to reformat the whole thing. But
Damn it! Okay, don't look at this. I'll fix it when I get off the phone. Yeah, so definitely the processing fees and charges still go to the owning library.
So what was your question, Erin?
So, and I do like the, one last question on what we've been talking about. We've got fines may be retained by the library which collects them, and then are fines and overdue fees different? Should we make some consistency in language, or call it fees and fines, or what's the languaging for that stage?
We're specifically talking about overdue fees here only, I think, so that should be clear.
So up here it calls them fines for overdues, and here it says fees for processing. Do you see that?
Yep.
So do we need to change this? We said fines, so we need to say fines here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe say overdue in that first line.
Yeah.
Overdue fines maybe
Okay.
retained.
Change this to overdue fines. Spell it out so there's no question. Okay, how's that look?
Nice.
So the only part we changed was the, we did change this wording here to make it all overdue fines. I'll highlight it all as a change. But we didn't change this, we just moved it. So is there any more discussion on this part of the agenda? Because the next part might raise controversy also. Is it time to look at the outstanding balance of $5 being the cutoff for people checking out items? Should we raise that to $10? I don't know. Should we leave it the same? This was set in 2010, and I think it was originally set when Sage originally made their circulation rules.
I like it at that level because we don't start warning people until they get close to that, and some actually want to be told sooner. So if we didn't start warning them till us up to 10, they'd probably be more upset.
That's a good point,
about
Perry.
that.
Anybody else?
I am happy with where it's at.
Okay. What was that? I heard someone in the background, it sounded like. Anybody else? Okay, so then the next thing on the agenda was review and revise the rules. So I think we did a little bit today. I think before the next committee meeting, we need to everybody needs to read over these and see if there's anything else that might be unclear or outdated and needs to be changed out.
This is Erin. I did have one thing with if a interlibrary loan is damaged and not returned, et cetera, and there's fees that need to go back to the owning library. I know there's been a couple of libraries in our district that have had questions, and I think I brought this up at the annual meeting, but I didn't, and I haven't read this policy clear through, so I don't know, it could be in here, but the process that needs to happen so say I'm in Pendleton and one of my patrons does not return a book from Baker, and so as I understand it, there's a process that you call Baker, you find out what the charge is, you find out what their processing fee is, and then you charge in Pendleton, you charge your Pendleton patron for that, and then that money does go back to Baker. Is that correct?
Well, I've never called Baker. I would wait till Baker calls me, is how it's happened in the past, but maybe that's my slacking and I was supposed to call Baker.
We encourage people to call us because we don't want to charge more than the book is or whatever item is really going to cost us to replace, and those replacement amounts, usually come down over the time. So we want to adjust that down if we can.
But in the initial letting people know that they've lost, like I've gotten letters from LeGrand. Your patron didn't return this book. This is what the money we want back for it. But if the patron, I guess, comes to the counter and says, hey, I've lost this book and I need to pay for it, you could just, what maybe sometimes happens is the staff person looks at the screen and says, okay, this is the replacement value and the processing fee. This is how much you owe. Like the other day, and here again, a young man came to pay, and I said, did you get a letter from Lake County? And he said, no, it just says on my account I owe $16 for this book, and I need to pay it so I can put more items on hold. And so I looked, and it was a 1990 paperback edition of a James Herriot book. So I'm going to reach out to Lake County and see what the replacement value will be. I said, no, keep your $16 until we find out for sure. Because some libraries are willing to negotiate and some can't.
Right.
And I think that in talking with a couple different library directors, the question was, I just got this check from another library. I don't know what it was for. I don't know. And so they didn't have any, nobody had called them. The processing fee hadn't been included. It was just the replacement, according to Sage, of the item. But they didn't have any contact. And so I was thinking that it might be kind of nice in the policy if that we could put in some of that process that should happen, so that you don't just get a check one day and you don't know why.
See, I always have a printout of the screen showing the item, the barcode, the replacement value, the processing fee, that I include with the check when I send it to the bookkeeper, and then include that with the check when I mail it to the owning library. But maybe, is that really in policy, or is that more procedural?
I know, and that's where at some point, do you have a process manual that goes along with this policy? If not, I think that's something that the process should happen. There should be something should clearly state, if your patron, if my patron does not return an item, I need to call, get the full cost and replacement value, and then mail that with appropriate paperwork, or invoice the library, or something. Something should happen so that you know where money's coming from and how much you need to get to somebody. But you all
Beth,
know that better than I.
Is it within? Is it in here somewhere in the circulation instructions?
It's been so long. We worked on a couple documents recently that may not be on here. So let me look around.
Am I on the right screen?
You are on the right screen for circulation instructions, but this is more circulation policies.
So you do feel that's a policy on how to process a return check? I thought that would be more procedural or process.
I think we could have a separate section for circulation procedures or processes. The instructions is more geared towards how to do things in Evergreen.
Correct. Okay.
So I think we need something else, another section on the website.
Okay. So we could task this committee with creating that. I'm writing it down, sorry. Thanks, Erin, for bringing that up.
Oh, sure.
If you go to circulation policies, there's a document called Lost Book Policy. That was, I mean, it was just a draft, I think, back in the old days of the committee.
Yeah, I know that we worked on this though. And so that's why I want to pull the new document.
I think it's been worked on way since 2003.
Yeah, and just in the past year. Because we wanted to cover what do we do if it's lost in transit, each way. So this document has a revision, and it was brought before the council. It just was not put up on the website.
And it's not here in the standard loan rules policies.
No. So I need to get it up on the website. And I can look around and see if I can find it while we're still talking and send it to you, Kathy.
Okay, thanks, Beth. So what else, what other things in the policy, this policy of the standardized loan rules, off the top of your heads, everybody? I know this is like
There are some
Oh.
numbers that are just wrong, like the number of holds we allow and the number of checkouts.
Yeah, those are wrong, I
old.
think.
Yeah, they're
Mhm.
old.
Also, didn't we make some changes 2 years ago at a board meeting, at the in-person meeting regarding library card application procedure? Seems like I remember that from 2 years ago, but I can't remember what the change was.
Would it have been a change that would have negated this document, Kathy? I guess I'm just trying to.
No, I don't think so. I don't remember. Maybe we just talked about it and never made a change. I'm trying to remember and it's not helping. It's not working.
Okay.
I know one thing, like the loan period for high demand materials. Our library currently does not allow renewals for DVDs, but I see here it says renewals are 2, so I think I'll just change my own policy. This will give me the power to tell the staff I'm forcing it.
Well, I think it's something that we could bring up for discussion.
Mm-hmm.
That high demand attribute, is that a circulation modifier?
It is not. I mean, the new high demand is a circulation modifier. There's some people that are using that, a few libraries.
And is that rotating out after the 90 days like it says in the policy?
That's probably a library by library situation. I don't know how proactive they are.
Because we've had that discussion before. I know that was a discussion 2 years ago in Hermiston, that some libraries are putting their brand new materials on embargo for a year or so.
Oh, but that's age protection, not a circulation modifier driven thing.
Okay.
I only ask because I can't remember what stat report it is, but it shows high demand, and I can't tell whether they're books or whether they're DVDs or what.
And for those libraries that use that collection, it could be both.
Right. So they're coming, yeah. So on our reports, they're interlibrary loan items, but I just don't know what format they are.
So, do you want to review this and then come back at another meeting and make any other changes before we take it to the council? Or do you want it to go to the council with this one change we made so that that can be implemented as soon as possible? We're coming up on an hour for our meeting today.
I was kind of thinking that because we hadn't met in so long, that it might be good to have a meeting sooner than we would normally have. And so I guess,
For the committee?
Yeah, for the committee. You know, whether that's 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I was thinking it would give us time to review the standard loan rules and look for gaps or things that we think are out of date or need to be changed, and bring some suggestions to the fore.
Okay.
But it also may give us another opportunity to generate some other issues that we need to talk about as a committee.
Does this day of the week work for the people that are here for the meeting today? Or would a
Yes.
different day be better?
Depends on if it's on a board meeting day for me or not.
Oh, yeah, okay. Rachel says it works for her. I would be available in 1 week, but not again on a Monday until the 16th of September. Since Monday the 2nd is a holiday and Monday the 9th I'm traveling back from a conference. Would a month be too long? Beth, in your opinion?
I don't think so, especially if we keep conversation active
Okay.
on the listserv or bounce ideas off each other. I think that if we had it that Monday, it would be before the council meeting.
Okay, that'd be good. Monday the 16th.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do our next meeting for Monday the 16th at 10 a.m. And Beth, do I just send out just to the general listserv for SAGE circulation, or is there a sub-SAGE circulation listserv?
We do have a circulation listserv, Kathy, but I think
Okay.
it's safer to send it out to the general one.
Okay,
So we
okay, I'll
make
do that.
sure that everybody is represented on that circulation listserv. That
Yeah. And then I'll type up the notes from today and I'll send out the policy with this highlighted possible changes that we are hoping that we came up with today. And if anybody has any other agenda items or more information before the next meeting, they could contact me. Was there anything else anybody wanted to bring up today? Okay, so not hearing anything. Thanks everybody for taking your time out today to work with us on this.
Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah,
Thank you, Kathy.
I admit I don't know all the policies for circulation, so this will be good. I'll learn more. Okay, thanks everybody.
Bye.
Beth?